Master North, John Adams, in the interest of the people. Hi, John.
Hi, Matt. How you going?
Very good. So crumbling from within.
Indeed. So I had in the last few days some interesting communication on the cash ban bill from within the government. So we do have some breaking news that we're going to review in today's show that no one in the mainstream media have, and that is that throughout this past week, a government MP sent me a series of encrypted messages exclusively to me to let me know that there is a internal revolt building within the coalition. So separate to this MP, let me just go on a slight tangent. I have spoken to several Liberals, Nationals throughout the week. The Nationals are under enormous pressure to oppose this legislation. The Liberals are very uneasy about it. A lot of concern about the backbench because they know that there is a lot of political pressure to oppose. So MPs across the political spectrum have been getting a lot of pressure. Obviously, we've seen this week the AFR come out with a piece trying to discredit us, trying to give politicians cover. But we'll see if that AFR hit piece will work or not. But separate, before the hit piece came out, I was told that there was at least one government MP who has made it known that they will oppose the legislation going forward. Now, how that opposition will play out, it will play out in the form of if there are internal forums or discussions within the government, they will be saying that they do not support this bill. And so generally the process of how legislation is approved within the government, in the coalition, is that Cabinet will come to a position. There'll be a Cabinet debate with the Prime Minister and the Cabinet Ministers. Once Cabinet has a view, then that view on that bill is presented to the joint party room. So the Liberals have their own party room meeting, the Nationals have theirs, but then there's a joint party room where the Liberals and the Nationals come together, and then there is a formal vote as to, well, what is the position of the party room, and that is a vote of the backbench. So I have been told that at least one government MP will be voting against the cash transaction ban bill in the joint party room. There'll be others. There is a campaign to mount for other MPs to join this effort. It was said to me that this MP is unaware as to do they have the numbers to stop Frydenberg and Sukkar on this bill or not. But I was given a set of instructions as to how we can help this MP defeat this bill. And so this is significant because so far the government has been presenting publicly a united front. Labor has been largely saying we will go along with the government. We've had obviously One Nation on this show and others saying no, we're against or we're to determine our position. But I can reveal that within the government there is a revolt to stop the Prime Minister and the Treasurer and the Assistant Treasurer from implementing this cash transaction ban bill, and that's big news.
Right. And it's almost a bit like the old debate about the Banking Royal Commission, right? When it started to effectively corrode internally inside their organisation, they got to the point where they had to do something, right?
Yes.
I can see parallels with that again here.
Yes. The Royal Commission was, slightly different in the sense that Labor and the Greens were for the Royal Commission, and in order to get it through the House of Reps, you needed someone in the government to change their view, and that key person was going to be George Christensen. When he indicated publicly he was going to vote for a commission of inquiry, and that's when the banks and Turnbull and Morrison decided to go forward with a Royal Commission to stop the Commission of Inquiry, because had the House of Reps established that Commission of Inquiry, they would have set the terms of reference, and that it would have been much more broader and more intrusive into the banks compared to what actually took place with the government's terms of reference and what Commissioner Hayne looked at. So
what this implication, though, is that there's an opportunity then still to make sure that the Liberal MPs know that there are lots of people who don't like this thing, right, this cash bill.
Yes.
Right? Because what that suggests is that there's a little bit of malleability within the party, right? And the more pressure that can be applied, particularly, I suspect, to the backbench, the more likely it is that the thing can be shoved a different direction.
Yes, yes. So just to be clear, I've received a series of messages, and some of those messages, just before we started recording, I showed them to you, and so you know who this individual is. We won't say who the individual
Yep.
who the individual is, but you've seen some of the messages, and the clear message from this particular MP is that there is an opportunity to defeat the legislation from within the government, but there needs to be two things that this MP says that they need. They need more pressure applied on backbench MPs, particularly if they are in marginal constituencies, any potential vulnerable senators, but also those who oppose the legislation, they basically need pressure applied on their colleagues, but also they need all the relevant people need the winning arguments. And so the winning arguments is a quite important point, because now that the AFR has said that some of the key arguments that we've been pushing are extreme conspiracy theories, there'll be dispute as to, well, what is this really about? Is it about civil liberties? Is it about the black economy? Are those claims legitimate about the black economy? Will this actually solve the black economy, even though international evidence suggests that it won't? Or is this about negative interest rates and monetary policy in the banking system? Or is it about competition and choice, about can you have cash, can you not have cash? I mean, so there is a series of issues on the table. I think we do have the winning arguments to suggest that this is not appropriate on the basis of evidence-based policy, but there needs to be a concerted effort from our audience to contact MPs by email, by phone, get in their face, tell them point blank. And some people have done this, because they've told me, they have told their MP, I will vote you out of office if you vote for this. But also, there are a lot of, we've done some analysis, other people have done analysis, to present credible arguments to MPs, just so that they have all the information in front of them. And if they say, for example, I don't agree with this argument or that argument, you've got the counter arguments to basically ensure that the MPs don't have any wiggle room, because they'll have all sorts of ways to say, well, I don't accept that argument, or I don't accept your thesis. But you've got to get these MPs to say, well, if you're going to vote for it, why? Why is this a good idea? And you've got to be ready to be able to argue against the MP and present more information. Because you think about it, government MPs or MPs in general, or senators, I mean, they've got a million issues they have to face. They've got constituent issues. They've got their personal lives, etc. So their ability to allocate a lot of time on this issue is quite limited. So you've got to grab their attention with key arguments, and hopefully those arguments are persuasive enough for them to say, okay, I've come to the view that either for political reasons or for civil liberties reasons or public policy reasons, I'll either be voting against it publicly, or I'll be advocating opposition from within the opposition or within the government. And I should say that this MP made it clear to me that they will not be voting against the government on the floor of the House of Reps. So if the joint party or if the coalition was to vote for this, or if they agreed internally, this MP would abide by the government's position and vote with the government. But there will be maybe civil war is a little bit too strong of a term, but there will be a strong fight within the government to kill this off. And obviously this MP has come to me because he's seen our show. He knows how effective we are, and he says, get your audience to mobilise so that we can stop the government from doing this.
Right, and it's worth just underscoring, John, I think, in terms of the cogent arguments, right? They're on your site, right? And they're on my site. So what we'll do is we'll put those links below for anybody who wants a bit of ammunition to be able to basically help in a conversation with, an MP. Because essentially the arguments are relatively straightforward, but it's really important to understand the arguments are supported by fact and evidence and documents.
Indeed. Now, look, just to go slowly in terms of some other news. So it was expressed to me throughout the week from sources within Parliament that Labor have said that they will support a Senate inquiry. So if a Senate inquiry were to take place, that gives us an opportunity to present our existing arguments, new arguments, because even Dr. Wilson Sy has looked at some of these issues around the size of the black economy in Australia versus other countries, and so there's new statistics that can be presented to Parliament to persuade them this is not a good idea. But also, I'm hoping that if there is a Senate inquiry, there's an opportunity for witnesses to be to come forward and present their case, and so some very powerful people in terms of their knowledge of this issue. And I know I would hope that I would be one of those people who could go to the Senate and to testify. So that process could be quite effective in trying to persuade the Senate not to go ahead with this. So Senate inquiry will be important. The other thing that Senate inquiry will do is it will delay the final vote, if it is to be a final vote. I mean, there is some speculation as to if there is a Senate inquiry, if the inquiry goes badly for the government, will the government abandon the legislation? Will it actually come to a Senate vote, or will it just go away, or will they try to delay it for 12 months? Hopefully the air will clear and then come back to it in sometime in 2020.
Okay. And what about the other minor parties? Where are they placed at the moment?
So obviously One Nation will oppose. Cora Bernardi has said that he will oppose. Centre Alliance and the Greens, we're getting positive signals about their opposition, but they haven't come to a final position. So other people have said, well, we want to see the legislation that comes to Parliament, noting that Treasury put out an exposure draft, and there's been a whole host of issues and technical issues raised. So we'll have to see what final version comes from Treasury and how individuals in Parliament, how they respond to that. But separate from that, one other key point that happened this week was so in question time in the House of Reps, a question was asked. The member for Bass asked Josh Frydenberg a question about the black economy. Josh Frydenberg was unapologetic about their pursuit of clamping down on the black economy, but also this cash ban was part of the response. There were two key reasons why Josh Frydenberg argued for why the cash ban was necessary. One was around tax leakage, and the other one was around stopping the ALP in terms of getting corrupt amounts of money in the order of $100,000. So let's actually listen to the question and the response by the Treasurer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question is to the Treasurer. Will the Treasurer inform the House how the Morrison government is ensuring stability and certainty by combating the threat of the black economy, and is the Treasurer aware of any alternative policies?
The Treasurer has the call again.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the member for Bass for her question, and thank her for winning a seat off the Labor Party, Mr. Speaker, and bringing it back to the coalition. And the member for Bass has been a local mayor. The member for Bass has been a farmer, and the member for Bass works hard for her local electorate. And she knows that the coalition is tackling the black economy, Mr. Speaker, because the black economy threatens the integrity of the tax system. It undermines community trust and confidence in our tax system, Mr. Speaker, and it gives businesses and individuals who do not do the right thing an unfair competitive advantage over businesses and individuals who do the right thing, Mr. Speaker. And that is why this side of the House in government established the Black Economy Task Force, and our response in last year's budget represented the first whole-of-government blueprint for tackling the black economy, Mr. Speaker. There were measures that we committed to which will see an additional $5.3 billion. That is money that will come into the budget to the government to spend on schools, to spend on hospitals, to spend on aged care, to spend on services, Mr. Speaker. We have completed 22 of the task force recommendations, with another 36 currently in progress. Shifting the taxing point for illicit tobacco, strengthening government procurement, increased integrity measures for high-risk sectors, and a cash payment limit of $10,000, Mr. Speaker. Now, I'm asked, are there any other alternative approaches, Mr. Speaker? Now, on this side of the House, We're prepared to stamp out the black economy, Mr. Speaker. But I don't think the same could be said for those opposite, Mr. Speaker. Why not? Why not, the Deputy Prime Minister asked. And I think, Deputy Prime Minister, because a limit of $10,000 is too low, Mr. Speaker. I think a limit of $10,000 is too low. Mr. Speaker, $100,000 seems to be the order of day for those opposite, Mr. Speaker, in Sussex Street. And the reality is, stamping out the black economy requires us to stamp out big cash payments, whether it is on High Street or Sussex Street, Mr. Speaker. The reality is we are tackling the black economy, and as a result, more money is going into the education and the health services that governments importantly provide, and more confidence and more trust is ensured in the Australian tax system from all Australians.
Well, that was quite extraordinary, John, wasn't it?
Indeed. I mean, look, there was a few points that the Treasurer made in his response that sort of I was scratching my head on. The first one is that he claims that the recommendations of the implementation of the recommendations of the Black Economy Task Force in its totality, so the cash ban and everything else, will generate an extra $5.3 billion of tax revenue. Well, I haven't seen some hard estimates as to, how's that actually going to take place? So, and obviously, if the government's going to make that claim, we're going to raise an extra $5 billion. Well, I mean, there was like more than 50 or 60 or 70 recommendations in that Black Economy Task Force. Well, which recommendations are going to lead to how much revenue going to be generated? So they haven't come down with any sort of numbers or forecasts to provide any justification for that number.
Yeah, and I believe that somewhere else I saw somebody suggesting that the size of the black economy, there's no way that number can be right in terms of the tax savings.
Exactly. So it's definitely incumbent on the Treasurer to come forward with figures and numbers and evidence to say, how much additional tax revenue will be generated and how that will be generated. And so to date, the government has failed to meet that test. So that's point one. Point two is that when Assistant Treasurer Sukkar was on Alan Jones, he said this was not about tax. It was about illegal activity, criminal activity, gangs, drugs, etc. And yet, what did Frydenberg emphasise? It's about tax. Well, there is no consistent script within the government about, why do you need this cash ban? Is it about tax? Is it about illicit activity? Is it both? Because we're getting a very mixed message. So that was a very interesting moment in that response, where the Treasurer came out with a completely different narrative to the Assistant Treasurer, and that shows me that the government is all over the shop on this particular issue. And then point number three is this whole issue around this cheap shot around the ALP and this 100,000 cash donation. Now, I went on Twitter this week and I said, basically, if Parliament is, if you want to say that Parliament is corrupt, Parliament is taking dirty money, I mean that's one issue. But if that is the case, that shouldn't result in me as a citizen losing my civil liberties just because Parliament's corrupt or certain politicians are taking money, like in terms of taking cash on the table. There are other laws that can be implemented. I mean, there are existing laws around corruption. If they're ineffective to stop this behaviour from happening, introducing new laws, send politicians to jail. I mean, there should be some politicians going to jail for some of the stuff that's been happening in the last few years about donations, about associations with controversial foreign groups, etc. So, this is not the way to deal with this. But I did speak to people, Liberals on the backbench, the day after this response was given, and a couple of backbenchers said it was a cheap shot by the Treasurer that was made in the confines of the parliamentary debate. It wouldn't work in the broader public, and that cheap shot made some of his own colleagues uneasy. And it wasn't particularly Frydenberg's finest hour, or it didn't actually convince his colleagues that this cash ban was good policy and it was something that the entire government should rally behind the Treasurer around.
Okay, so just as we close out then, we need to put more pressure on MPs.
Yes, and what I should emphasise is that this government MP who is leading this internal revolt within the government has explicitly said to me, and you saw the message, we need more. This is his words. We need more pressure on parliamentarians, and actually we have a quote in terms of what the instruction is. So let me just bring this up. So this is the government MP of how to defeat the cash ban within the government. Quote: put pressure on more backbenchers to speak up in internal forums. They need to be armed with the winning arguments and also armed with constituent concerns. So this is the instruction from within the government. If we're going to bring the government, if we're going to bring this Soviet Liberal government down from within, this is the marching orders. So I would encourage people to, again, contact your local MPs, your local senators. Don't let up. Keep the pressure on. Provide new sources of evidence. I have arguments. You have arguments. Other people out there are writing their own analysis, which in some of it's very good. Do your own research. Present that to parliamentarians, particularly coalition backbench MPs in marginal constituencies, and say to them, when you discuss this in the joint party room, when you have discussions in internal forums within the government, we expect you to be against this, because again, if you vote for this, we will vote you out. I mean, that has to be the message. So there's an opportunity to bring the government down from within. I've been given encrypted messages about this internal revolt. That this MP said that this show. Whereas the AFR says we're involved in extreme conspiracy theories. No, there are people in the government who say no, this is an effective platform to get this message out, and so hence this is the opportunity to express to our audience, and for our audience to tell their friends and families that there is an opportunity to stop the coalition from within, and we've all got to chip in to help this MP win the day within the government.
Right, and the not-so-secret weapon, of course, is your poster.
Indeed. So the poster has been, interestingly picked up over the last week. So quite a few people have contacted me. They wanted physical, so they wanted digital images. I've been able to spread that around. People wanted physical copies of the poster. That's where the CC have been distributing physical copies. And interestingly enough, Robbie from the CC entered Parliament this week with a physical copy of the poster, and that was confiscated by the security officials at Parliament. So anyone who thinks that you have free speech within the halls of power in the people's chamber, no, Robbie was he was not allowed to walk around with this poster. Too controversial for Parliament to walk around with. So that was interesting. But there are other people who have taken it upon themselves. They've taken the digital image, that they've taken it down to their local sort of office works or whatever the case may be, printed it up, started putting it across the community. We have one example of where an individual has gone to a print shop, has printed it up on a T-shirt. Actually, he's printed up a few shirts. He's going to send me one. Hopefully, I get it in the next couple of days or so. So I'll be interested to look at that. So we've had several people say I want because I put this image on social media about this T-shirt with the image. People like that and go, how do I get a T-shirt? Well, if people do want a T-shirt, we are looking about doing a larger print run of shirts and sort of maybe covering costs and helping along with the fight in terms of getting this all out there. So if people do want a shirt, contact me via email, john@adamseconomics.com, and hopefully we can get enough pre-orders so that we can we need about 50 people to say yep, I want a shirt, and that will be enough for us to go to the printers, get all these shirts printed up, distributed across the country, and we can have basically walking billboards informing people about what's really going on.
Right, and so just to summarise, the fight for the interest of the people continue.
Yes, we will continue until our last breath.
Thank you, John. Talk to you again next time.
Thank you.
Martin North, John Adams, in the interest of the people. We'll see you next time.